Welcome back, grade 10s. So in my previous video, I introduced you to the general journal. So I introduced you to the function and the format of the general journal, which we discussed in detail. I then spoke to you about the first transaction which we enter into the journal, and it was bad debts. I then spoke to you about when the owner takes stock for personal use. So today, or in this video rather, I'll be covering two new transactions, and it is interest charged on overdue debtors as well as cancelling discounts allowed. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Now, we sell on credit, which means that our debtors take the stock now and then they pay us back later. In grade 11, you'll learn that we generally give our debtors between 30 and 60 days to pay us back. Now, often we get debtors who take much longer to pay us back, and we've spoken about internal control on debtors, and we can just do a little bit of revision on that, okay? And internal control on debtors is used in order to encourage early payments from debtors, okay? So to really try and get them to pay between 30 and 60 days. We really don't want them to take longer than that, because we need the cash from our debtors so that we can pay back our creditors. So we really need them to pay back quite quickly. So in class, we've discussed various ways that we can encourage debtors to pay back, and it's things like send regular reminders or SMSs to just say, you owe us this amount of money. The second thing that we often do is that we offer discounts, and we say, okay, if you pay early, we will give you a discount of a certain amount, which they really enjoy. The next thing we do is send statements. So we have to send their statements once a month so they know how much they owe us. And the last thing we do, which we're going to discuss in detail now, is to charge interest on their accounts. Now, this for them is actually seen as a punishment, okay? Because they know that if I don't pay back in a certain time, we are going to increase the amount that they owe us. Okay, so if we are increasing the amount that they owe us, when we're looking at in our point of view, this is actually awesome, because let's say we have a debtor who owes us 50 Rand, okay? So we sold to them for 50 Rand, and this is what they owe us, okay? This is what we sold the stock for. But now they've taken over 60 days to pay us back. And what we say is, okay, you've taken a long period of time, so we are going to charge you 10% interest on that payment. So we then take the 50, times it by 10%, and we get 5 Rand, okay? This 5 Rand is extra for us, okay? At no point before this happened were we deserving of this 5 Rand, okay? But now that they've taken longer to pay, we get to charge them, okay? This is awesome. This makes us super happy. Now, what this interest is called, you cannot just call it interest income. We have created a whole new account now, and it is called interest on overdue debtors, okay? And because it's extra income that we've earned, we classify it as an income. It makes us happy. And it makes us happy because now, instead of receiving 50 Rand from the debtor, we're now going to receive 55 Rand from the debtor, which is very exciting. Okay, so let's read what I've said. It says, if debtors don't settle their accounts within a certain period, I've told you about that period now, the business may charge them interest. And then I've said there, interest on overdue debtors is an account. Please, you may not call this interest income. And that is because at this point in your high school accounting career, you've learned a variety of different interest income. We've got interest on current accounts, interest on fixed deposits, okay? And now we have interest on overdue debtors. So please, interest income isn't in detail enough. Now, we need to think. If we are charging interest on a debtor's account, we definitely know that the one account is interest on overdue debtors, which is an income. So now we have to think, okay, what is the other account name that's involved? Because remember, we always need two accounts because of the double entry. So if we are charging interest on the debtor's account, then nice and easy, we can see that the other account has to be the actual debtor's account, which is debtor's control. So let's see if we can quickly figure out the debits and credits. So interest on overdue debtors is an income. Debtor's control is an asset. What is happening to our income if we are receiving this interest? If we're going to earn this interest, well, the income is going to increase. And then what is going to happen to the debtor's account if we're charging him with interest? His account is also going to increase. So assets that increase always go on the debit side, and incomes that increase always go on the credit side. So we can see we'll always debit debtors control and credit interest on overdue debtors. I'm just doing it in shorthand here, but we'll do the example now. So it says, C. Smith's account of 1,200 Rand must be charged with interest at 10% per annum for 3 months. This is very important, okay? So now we do the calculation and I take 1,200, I times it by 10%, and I times it by 3 out of 12 months because the debtor hasn't paid for 3 months. You can't just times it by 0.1 because then you're going to get a 12-month figure, okay? We need to times it by 3 over 12. And once we've done that in our calculators, you will get an amount of 30 Rand. Then we ask ourselves, what are the accounts involved? We know that they are debtors control and interest on overdue debtors. I always do it in shorthand just to figure out my debits and credits. Remember, debtors control is an asset. Interest on overdue debtors is an income. What's happening to the debtor's account? If we're adding interest onto his account, it is increasing. And then what is happening to our income? It is also increasing. So we know we need to debit debtors control and credit interest on overdue debtors, okay? Because this is a foreign entry, you know we have to enter it into the general journal. But we're watching out for this debtors. We cannot write debtors control. Remember, in any journal, we always write the debtor's name. And why do we do that? To remind ourselves that we have to go to the debtor's ledger because we have to add that 30 Rand to his account. So here we go. Debit C. Smith, which is the debtor's control account. Why? Because the asset is increasing. And we put the amount there, the 30 Rand. What do we need to credit? Interest on overdue debtors. Credit that 30 Rand. Then you ask yourself, am I dealing with a debtor or a creditor? Yes, we are. Here's the debtor that we're dealing with. So where do we need to go? Into the debtors control column, and we need to debit it. Look, we debited it there in the actual journal, and now we need to debit it in the T account, okay? Why does this also make sense? Because remember, this is the debtors control T account, which works plus minus. And what's happening to his account? It's increasing because we're charging him interest. And the way to finish off a transaction like this is to then do your narration. There you can specifically see, so this would change, obviously, depending on the transaction you're given. 10% per annum interest charged for 3 months. Please, like I said in the previous video, you have to learn these narrations off by heart as they are marked. Now the transaction's finished. Please don't forget you need to underline the transaction. Now, you're not done because you know whenever you're dealing with the data and you've entered into a journal, where do you immediately need to go? You have to go update his ledger. So we come to C. Smith's ledger. Here's his balance at the beginning of the month, 1,200, and now we are charging him interest on overdue debtors. Now, I know you guys are used to writing the source document here. So, for example, DJ, you'd write duplicate invoice. But when it comes to the GJ, you really have to be specific. So you can see I've written here, interest on overdue debtors. And what's happening to his account? It is increasing with the 30 Rand. Now he owes us 1,230 Rand. Again, I'm not going to focus on the general ledger with you. This is what is important for now, is just getting the GJ and the ledger correct. Okay, nice and easy. Then the last transaction I'm doing in this video is canceling discounts allowed on dishonored checks. Okay, so we really have to work through this. And the way I work through big transactions like this is I always talk about what initially happened. Okay, so I'm just going to do a brief example. So initially, we have a data, okay, and this data comes to pay back, okay? Which we're super happy about. So this data will come and he wants to pay back some of the debt that he owes. So then we have to think, okay, in what journal do we record this when a debtor comes to pay back? Because we are receiving money, we have to enter it into the cash receipts journal. Now, let's say we have a debtor whose full debt amount, so how much they owe us, is 900 Rand, okay? And let's say the transaction says that they issued a check for 800 Rand. Okay, now, they came to settle their full debt of 900, but they only paid 800. So we need to identify, did they underpay us? Well, it looks like it, but why is there this difference? Okay, what you guys have learned this year is we must have granted discounts. Okay, so we would put this in the CRJ as normal, and let's identify the debit and the credit transactions. Well, the accounts involved are bank, because we are receiving money. Okay, then we have discounts allowed, because we're granting discounts. And lastly, what we also have is actual debtors control. Now, I've written it in this specific order. As you can see, you'll see now, I classify. Bank is an asset. Discounts allowed is an expense. And debtors control is also an asset. Then what I do is identify whether the account is increasing or decreasing. So what is happening to bank if a debtor comes to pay us back? Well, bank will have to increase because we are receiving money. Okay, then what's happening to discounts allowed? The expense. The expense is increasing, okay? To give discount sucks because that means we aren't getting the full amount back. We can see he only paid us 800 and his debt was 900. So we are losing 100 Rand of that sale, okay? And then because the debtor is paying us back, what's happening to his account? It is decreasing, okay? So what can we see here? We need to debit bank, debit discounts allowed, and credit debtors control. But now let's figure out the amounts as well. So I can just draw a column here so you can see the debits and credits. Okay, so we need to debit bank. Now, what are we actually receiving? Are we receiving the full date amount? Are we receiving 100 Rand or are we receiving 800? We are receiving the 800 Rand, okay? Because that's what the debtor wrote on his check. So that's what we actually received. Then we say, okay, how much discount did we grant him? We granted him 100 Rand. And remember, we also need to debit this 100 Rand. And then debtors control needs to decrease, so we need to credit it. And what is it going to decrease by? The full 900 Rand. The full debt is gone. He settled his account. He owes us nothing. Can you see our debits and our credits equal? Okay, so this you guys have already done before, and that should be quite easy for you now. But now we start to face a problem, and this is where this new transaction comes in. Okay, so this is what initially happened, and now we've got the new transaction. Okay, so the transaction will say that the bank marked the check RD insufficient funds. Now, you guys have already dealt with RD checks, okay? So let's talk about what happened when we had a check marked RD, okay? So RD checks. Now, if a check has been marked RD, that means that we did not actually receive any money. So what we thought we received here in bank, we didn't actually receive. So we actually need our bank to decrease because we didn't receive that money, okay? And in order to decrease bank, we know that we would enter RD checks in the CPJ. And there was a specific debtors control column where we would enter this transaction. Now, you guys were used to just doing that, but then I have to ask you a question, okay? This is the 800 Rand that we're dealing with now, okay? We did not receive that 800 Rand. We took that check to the bank and they said, this person doesn't have any money. So we know we didn't receive this 800 Rand. Now, the question I have to pose to you is if the debtor didn't actually pay you that 800 Rand, I want to know, does he still deserve the discount? And hopefully you are screaming at your screen and you know this answer. Definitely no. How can you give a discount to a debtor who hasn't even settled his debt? Okay, so this is where this transaction lies, is this portion here. Because he doesn't deserve the discount, we now need to cancel it. Okay, so what can we see here? You already knew, and this was always my first step, is number one, we need to cancel the actual check in the CPJ. And then the second thing that we have to do is cancel that discount. He doesn't deserve it. And where do we cancel discount? Well, because it's such an infrequent transaction, we cancel it in the GJ. Okay, so let's do this transaction then and see how it will work. So I said the first step is to cancel the payment, okay, to do that CPJ transaction, which you've already learned. So we know it goes into the CPJ, okay? So let's do the debits and credits. Okay, so we know bank has to be credited because bank is decreasing. We didn't receive that 800 Rand that we originally thought we did. So you can see we're putting it on the opposite side to cancel the payment. Okay, so if I have a debit and a credit side, there's that 800 Rand. Okay, now what's the contra account? Can we remember it is debtors control. Okay, and why does that make sense? Because debtors control is an asset, and what is happening to the debtors account? It's increasing. We adding that 800 Rand back onto his account because he didn't pay. So now he still owes us that 800 Rand. So you guys have done this transaction, and then we'd obviously enter that into his ledger. Okay, but we are not done, because here's this 800 Rand and we've dealt with that. We've cancelled it. Okay, but now remember I said he doesn't deserve this discount. So when we granted a term, we granted it on the debit side. So how do you think we're going to cancel it? Well, we're going to have to cancel it on the credit side. So let's see how it works. Step number 2 is to cancel the discount portion. Okay, so what are the 2 accounts affected? And I won't do it in debits and credits yet. Let's just figure it out. We need to. We've got discounts allowed. Okay, and what's the contra account? Who did you grant the discount to? You can see in this transaction, in that initial transaction, the main contra account was debtors control, because that's who you're granting the discount to. So debtors control. Then I say, okay, what type of an account is discount allowed? It's an expense. And what type of an account is debtors control? It is an asset. Then I say, okay, what's happening to the expense? Well, if we're canceling it, that means that the expense is decreasing. We're not incurring that expense anymore because he didn't pay us back. And then what's happening to the debtors control amount? Well, it is increasing because we're adding that 100 Rand back onto his account because he doesn't deserve the discount anymore. So we can then see when we use a list, okay, discounts allowed is an expense that's minusing. So I find my expenses minus on the credit side. So I'll put here discounts allowed, okay, because the expense is decreasing, and I'll then debit debtors control. And that is how you cancel discounts. Nice and easy. So let us do the one in the notes. And it says, the bank returned a check for 150 Rand. Okay, so do you all agree that on the check, what was written on it, what it was issued for, was 150 Rand? Okay, it was previously received from M. Ellis in settlement of his account, and M. Ellis had been granted a discount of 15 Rand on this payment. Okay, so what can I immediately see here? His full debt is in the 150. That is what he actually paid. So if we add these 2 amounts together, the 150 and the 15, we get 165. This amount is his full debt. This is what he actually came to pay. Okay, so now what needs to happen? Remember, and we'll go through the 2 steps again. The first thing, okay, step number 1, we need to cancel the payment because we didn't receive anything. Okay, so that sucks, first of all. And then the second thing we need to do is we have to cancel the discount because does he deserve it? Definitely not. Okay, so in what journal do we cancel payments, or in what journal do we record RD checks? In the CPJ. Okay, now remember the actual amount, what we thought we received was the 150 Rand, but that's what got bounced. So the debit and the credit would be credit bank. Why? Because bank is decreasing because we didn't actually receive the 150. And debit debtors control. Okay, why? Because M. Ellis didn't actually pay you back, so you have to increase his account again. He still owes you that 150. So we enter this into the CPJ, but remember, you would have to go and update his ledger. So we come to his debtors ledger and we say there, RD check, CPJ, and look, on the debit side, makes sense because his account is increasing. So now he owes you 150 Rand. But you wouldn't be happy with this because are you still going to give him the 15 Rand discounts? Definitely not. So now we need to cancel the discount. And in what journal do we cancel discounts allowed? You now know it happens in the GJ. Okay, so what are the two accounts affected? Discounts allowed and debtors control. Okay, you classify. Discounts allowed is an expense. Debtors control is an asset. What's happening to the expense? Well, it's decreasing because we're not giving discounts anymore. And what's happening to the debtors account? It's increasing because you're adding that discount back. He owes you that 15 Rand. Okay, so we can see A plus. So we have to debit debtors control, credit discounts allowed. Remember, the debtors account the debit account always has to be entered first. And also when we enter this into the GJ, remember you have to write the debtor's name, just like you do in every other journal. You always write the debtor's name. So we come to the GJ and we say debit M. Ellis, okay, because his account's increasing, debit, and remember M. Ellis is a debtor, so where do we have to go? Into the debtors control T account, 15 Rand. And then we need to credit discount allowed. Why? Because the expense is decreased.